You are viewing and listening to Issues and Answers on the WCEG Talk Radio Network. I am your host, Norman A. Carter Jr. Yes, we are a network, and our programming is available to you on a multiplicity of media platforms. We are the worldwide community empowerment group, also known as WCEG for short. Our goal is not just to brighten your view of the world, but also to enlighten your perspective about our environment, our socio-political struggles, that bane of classism and racism that makes all of our lives more difficult than it should be, and our quest to make this world just a bit better than it was before we arrived in it. May God bless us all as we try to knit the tapestry of humanity into a quilt of peace, brotherhood, and understanding. WCEG has grown even larger than it was just 3 months ago. Before we were available on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Now, please allow me to explain some of that growth. We now have two websites, WCEGTalkRadio.com and WCEGRadio.com. We have three separate TV channels. They are WCEG Talk, WCEG TV, and WCEG Music Videos. We have two mobile apps, iOS for all Apple devices and Android for all Android devices. If you have Alexis, you can be lazy and just say, play WCEG Talk Radio. And guess what? You'll hear us, hopefully me. On your Roku device, just type in WCEG Network. We continue to be available on the social media platforms of Facebook, Twitter, now known as X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Facebook users may even type in questions and comments. All of our programs can be viewed live on YouTube, and they are also archived on YouTube, so you can view them at any time. Podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, JioSaavn, which is India, and nearly every other podcast platform you can imagine. WCEG is available worldwide, and our programming on Issues and Answers will reflect that. Finally, topics and opinions on Issues and Answers are those of our host, Norman A. Carter Jr., moi, and my guest, and not the WCEG Network, so leave my boss alone. My show, my words, my guest. Let's get moving on this installment of Issues and Answers. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you the inimitable Dr. Kevin H. Abdur-Rahman. Let me give you a little bit of his background. Dr. Kevin Abdur-Rahman is a Philadelphia native who grew up in the Germantown section of Philadelphia. He attended Roosevelt Junior High School and is a 1970 graduate of Germantown High School. During his early development, Dr. Rahman excelled in sports, especially basketball. Just inducted into the Philadelphia Basketball Hall of Fame, mind you. However, somehow, as a teen, he was attracted to a life that was the streets of Philadelphia. After sacrificing most of his youth to this lifestyle, as well as spending 10 of those years in Granite Prison, Dr. Rahman embraced the correct concepts of the religion of Islam. Dr. Rahman's growth and development brought him to the conclusion that his experiences should not be repeated, and he dedicated himself to helping people who may ultimately face those same fork-in-the-road decisions that set him in the wrong direction. He began his career in the mid-1980s by becoming a community organizer for an agency called Crisis Intervention Network. I'm very familiar with that. Crisis Intervention was founded to address the problems of gang violence in the city of Philadelphia. He entered college, listen here, at the age of 35 and subsequently received a Master of Human Services degree from Lincoln University and a Doctor of Education degree from Temple University. In 1988, Dr. Abdur-Rahman founded a delinquency prevention program called Total Response Incorporated. Total Response was a nonprofit organization committed to the development and coordination of youth motivational programs using athletics as a methodology. Interventions such as mentoring, counseling, academic advising, and substance abuse awareness were incorporated into a summer basketball program with 600 youth participants and 35 adult staff. That program existed for another 31 years under the name of Positive Image. For 23 years, Dr. Abdur-Rahman served the City College of New York, CCYNY, as an Associate Director of Athletics and Operations, Supervisor of Recreation, and intramural athletics, and ending his career as the Director in Athletics. In 1994, he founded the Wingate Fitness Center, which was the first state-of-the-art fitness facility on the campus of the City College of New York. Dr. Abdur-Rahman has authored 2 books, Solving the Riddle, which I really read and enjoyed, where he presents his life as a case study for the rehabilitation of the criminal mind, and his newest book, The Eruption of Possible, right here. Yeah. Eruption of Possible, where he makes the compelling argument that ending or reducing, the epidemic of crime and gun violence among our youth should be put into the hands of former practitioners of crime and violence who have successfully transitioned into positive and productive lives. Dr. Abdur-Rahman, welcome to Issues and Answers.
Thank you, Norma.
Boy, I tell you, we could sign off with that almost, but not quite. But not quite.
I was like, who is he talking about?
Yeah. I did want to add this to our audience because thanks to social media, Dr. Rahman and I met
About
3.5 years ago. Oddly enough, there's an incident in my book, which I wrote before him, and an incident in his book, which he had never seen my book at the time. And it's the same incident. The difference is I wrote about that incident from the perspective of a police officer who was outraged by the conduct of certain other police officers. And he wrote it from the perspective of being the victim of these police officers. And you can't put it any other way. He was beaten up and arrested by these police officers just for being out in the street. So that was the genesis of our meetings, and his book, Solving the Riddle, really hit home for me. Dr. Rahman, if you can give us a bit of synopsis of Solving the Riddle, how you evolved, how that it came about, and a little bit about the substance of it.
Well, both my books, Solving the Riddle and The Eruption of Possible, are primarily about the evolution of the human spirit and the evolution from one direction to another direction, so that if unfortunately your life has been directed in a negative, not so positive direction, there are psychological tools that you can use to redirect your life. And so it's kind of, Solving the Riddle is more of an autobiography of my life and how, and I use the term solving the riddle serious in a serious manner, because life gives you little hints. And a lot of times we don't read those hints. And a lot of times if we read those hints, those certain poor decisions we may not make. A good example, the first riddle I ever learned was from my grandmother. And every time I was running off at the mouth and talking back, she used to say, "Boy, you don't believe fat meat is greasy, do you?" And I didn't get it until I kept talking and the slap came. But that was my warning that if you don't shut up, I'm gonna smack the you know what out you, right? But my point is, life, even from that early stage, 4 or 5 years old, whatever I was, there were riddles that I had to solve. And then solving those riddles, it kind of dictated the direction of your life. So that's why I named it Solving a Riddle, because that was the first riddle I failed to solve, and it led to consequences. And then further on in my life, I became influenced by Imam W.D. Muhammad. And he used to use a lot of riddles when he first took over the Nation of Islam from his father. He used to use what I call baby language for those of us who thought we were Muslims, but we were actually practicing Black nationalism. So he had to take baby steps to introduce us to true Islam. And he used to use riddles like man means mind, you know what I mean? Or man means developed mind. Woman means womb of mind. So he used to talk to us in riddles too. So my life has been a gradual evolution of either not solving or solving some type of riddle.
We're going to be jumping back and forth here because what you just said played into a lot of people will say that all of us are products of our environment. But you took it in a little different way of explaining this in Eruption of the Possible, where you talk about the caterpillar. Right. And I thought that was interesting. If you could explain that to our audience, because that was really deep.
Well, the analogy I use in the book is not my own. I didn't originate it, but the caterpillar has been a symbolic for evolution, because they start out in a cocoon and they develop all the ingredients for their growth and development forever is within that womb. Matter of fact, I always quote James Baldwin. James Baldwin says, the tree grows because the seed remains intact. So all the ingredients for a productive life is in that cocoon. And as the butterfly develops and becomes a caterpillar, they go around eating leaves. And what I didn't know until I did research, caterpillars don't like dry leaves. They can't, it alters their growth and development. They like moist leaves. Imam Muhammad said the idea of moist leaves, water represents morality. And it's symbolic of morality. So they have to eat the moist leaves to get the right direction. So the reason I use that analogy in the Eruption of Possible is because it was related to the idea that ex-felons or ex-convicts or former felons or whatever you want to call them, or whatever name you want to call, we remain for the most part, a hidden community, because no matter what you accomplish in your life, and he talked about some of the accolades I accomplished, no matter what you accomplish in your life, once your history is discovered, then you're judged by what you did and not who you become. So the analogy in the book was, I never heard a butterfly referred to as a former caterpillar. And the analogy is that the human spirit can evolve the same way as the butterfly evolves. We can start out in a closed environment, and we have to remain, I call it contained within the gravitational pull of materialism. But we get to a point where our intellect evolves, our spirit evolves, and we can even rise above the pull of materialism. So that's the analogy. So basically, I consider, or symbolically, the evolved human being as the butterfly. And nobody is who they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. So your evolution out of that cocoon you came from, family or whatever you talk about, environment, stuff like that. Your genetics do play a part, but unfortunately that environment can pull away from your genetics. And I say that because I went to church every day of the week with my grandmother, every day. Now I'm not talking about one day off, but that good Christian upbringing that she gave me as a foundation, it wasn't even enough to stop the negative pull of the outside world, of the environment, of the streets of Philadelphia. So basically, that's the analogy of the butterfly in a nutshell. It's symbolic of our evolution as human beings.
And I don't want to minimize your background. You really were close to some very, very bad people.
I was, yeah. I mean, well, you're from Philadelphia, so you know.
Yeah.
I don't even have to explain to you. When once you make that choice to go left instead of right, well, left is a hellhole.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm going to move back from solving the riddle to eruption of the possible, because part of the thrust of eruption of the possible is you're not only trying to change the person who may be, as you like to put it, a divorcee from criminal behavior, but the perspective of people looking at others. And one thing that I didn't know, and you quote here where 1.1 million small business owners have a criminal record.
And 633,000 of them have felony convictions.
Correct. That is mind-boggling, but it points to something that as a society we have to come to grips with, and that is that people who people who have felony convictions can be redeemed, and
certainly. And along with that data, what people don't understand is that there's over 22 million ex-felons in the United States, but there's only 2.2 million locked up. So somebody you can't have 20 million criminals running around. So basically somebody had to redeem their humanity. Somebody had to, a large percentage of those ex-felons had to become ex-felons. And when we say ex, we mean a discontinuation of not only criminal behavior, but criminal thinking. And I think it's important that we understand that thought controls behavior and thought controls actions. So you're never going to eradicate crime or even come close to eradicating crime if you don't address criminal thinking. And I think that's where, number one, the eruption of possible is different, and where we have not really targeted the idea that, criminal thought is the disease, not criminal behavior. Criminal behavior is just the manifestation of the disease.
I remember you somewhere here, you quoted the Chinese philosopher,
right?
Where about Taos, yes, about thoughts leads to actions,
right?
And that's basically what you're saying, and that's
meaning that you have to protect. What he meant is even your thoughts, you have to protect from negativity, because you're something, and I'm not trying to be a philosopher or anything. I'm just, I'm preaching to the choir, so to speak. But your subconscious takes in information at a much more rapid pace than your conscious mind. So a lot of ideas and thoughts and ideas are sitting in your subconscious mind, waiting to be served up that you didn't even know you processed. Your subconscious mind is like a tape recorder. It just records. And I know you and everybody else out in the audience has had some crazy thoughts and said to themselves, where the heck did that thought come from?
Right.
It just was recorded. So we have all this stuff that's unprocessed in our subconscious. So I mean, and guess what? The devil knows that. You understand? The devil knows that. You know what I mean? You know, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know as much about the Bible as do Quran, but in the Quran, the devil tells God he's gonna make evil fair seeming. You follow what I'm saying? So it's a whole psychological process that the environments you come from, no matter where you come from, they speak to you. In fact, I talk about it in Eruption Possible at the newborn baby. Soon as the mother holds it and he finds comfort in his mother's arms, that's the environment speaking to him. Where from that point on, we're programmed to seek what comfort from day one.
No matter where that comfort comes from.
Right.
And what you say is I mean, it's not just your thoughts. For those of us who we can go back to our Christian teachings in the Bible, where Jesus talks about, you know, when the thoughts in your head, you consider that you're sinning already.
Yeah, Jesus said you sin mentally before you sin physically. You know what I mean?
It's the thought process really, really means a lot. And then that's where we get into discipline and a whole bunch of other stuff that comes up. But the foundation of it is eating the good fruit and bringing good things into your body and into your soul helps to forestall that type of thing, or makes you stronger against it.
You know who understands that best? Those that want to manipulate us.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Don't believe me? Just ask the cigarette industry.
Woo!
You know, they know that process better than what I can even talk about it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you said something there very profound, and my wife and I were talking about it the other day, in different words, where when the abnormal becomes normal.
You're right.
And we're seeing a lot of that today, and it's scary. But let me get back to Eruption of the Possible here, because there's a part here at the very beginning which really escaped my understanding, and I'm going to read it for our audience. And it begins, it's like the first page, it's not one of the numbers page, but as soon as you open the book, it says, everyone does not have the potential or circumstance to become a criminal, but everyone has the potential or circumstance to become a victim. We must all become partners in solving this issue of crime and violence. Now, that didn't make sense to me. It made sense, but it didn't make sense until I got to the epilogue, where you say, criminal thought and criminal behavior are not original members of the community of self. Think of the conscious as the mind's immune system. When the immune system is compromised, there is no protection against widespread diseases. When the disease or criminality of criminal thought spreads, a life of criminal behavior exists. I don't want to go on because I'm reading, but man, that's heavy duty stuff. And that came out of your mind.
Yeah, well, the part in the front that you alluded to, it came about. I always refer back to my foundation, which is the Quran, right? Mm-hmm. And the Quran says, when you save a life, it's as if you had saved the entire world or entire people. It's as if you have saved a whole people. Meaning this, and when I say meaning this, the way I interpret that, as it relates to this book, is that you don't just have criminals. The other side of crime is you got to have victims. You can't be a criminal without victims. So take me, for instance. My case happened in June of 1975. So what's that, 48 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about these past 48 years. If I did not resurrect my life and rediscover my humanity, think about in 48 years how many victims that I would have had. Even if I had been locked up for life, in Pennsylvania, in order to get locked up for life, you have to kill somebody. So even if I was in prison doing a life sentence now, it's indicative that I had already killed someone. So my point being is that you can't have a criminal without the victims. You follow what I'm saying? It's like,
yes,
both opposite sides of the coin. So if you stop somebody from being a criminal, you also save their future victims. So that's what that really means, is that it's a partnership. You're not sitting out in the suburbs isolated from crime, because you may not be and that's why I say the circumstance. You may not be in the hood or where crime is very active and stuff, but you still are a potential victim of crime. So you have just as much invested in solving the riddle of this whole gun violence and crime thing. You have as much invested as I do of being a former criminal. You have as much invested as the criminals, because you're their prey. So if you get them out of the thought processes of criminal thought, then you're saving your own life. Because who knows, when you walk out of here right now, especially in this environment where we got one thing about you and I, when we grew up, we couldn't even imagine mass shootings. I mean, right. We grew up in Philadelphia at the height of the gang situation. And even at the height of the gangs, where in Philadelphia, every gang only had a 4-block radius. You went 4 blocks each way, you had 4 different gangs. You didn't have assault rifles and all that stuff. So we didn't have mass shootings and stuff. So even today, it's even more important to take the potential criminal and change his criminal thought process or his inclinations towards criminal thought, and change that, so therefore that you're saving his future victims.
And that sounds like what you're actually actively doing right now. Is that correct?
That's what I've been trying to do since when did I come home? 1986. Since I came home. That's
amazing. And I don't take that lightly, because one thing that's the emphasis of your book, and I think that we don't touch on it enough, is the great resource we have of people who have divorced themselves. I begin to like that phrase, from a life of criminality.
Yeah, and the reason why I use that is because you don't call a butterfly a former or ex-caterpillar.
Exactly.
There's 2 different lives, and I talk about that in the book also, where in my preface, where the transformation within me, there was Kevin Applegate and Kevin Rockmine coexisting in my body, till one had to outgrow the other, and the other one was eliminated. So we have those transformations within our own mind, and excuse me, the tragedy is this, is that when you hold it against me of being and I'll give you the example of my own life. I spent 23 years at the City College of New York, and I had what I feel is an exemplary career. And one day in August of 2016, a young person was on one of these websites that you can pay $50 to, and they can look up anybody's criminal history. They got thousands of these websites out now, right? Somebody saw my name and reported to the school. The 23 years that I did there no longer counted. Next thing I know, I was forced into retirement. So my point being is that even with the evidence before them, that not only had I been at City College for 23 years, When my case was discovered, it was over 40 years old. That didn't matter. Only thing that mattered was I was an ex-felon. In my case, you can multiply that thousands, millions of times. And that's the point of the book, is that you're judged by what you did, not who you become. And
that's
and you can multiply that over and over and over. And so that's the essence of my book, is that, you know what I mean? We need to, and I mentioned a few examples, right? In my book. I mentioned a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, who he wrote a book himself, named Larry Miller, now called Jump. Larry Miller was arrested at 16 for murder. And now Larry Miller is the chairman of the board for the Jordan brand for the Nike Corporation. If he was held to what he did at 16, he would not be where he is today. And so it's just not me. So it's not like I'm bitter and I'm mad because of what happened to me. It's not just happened to me. And then I said earlier, the real tragedy is society never benefits from our experiences because we can't talk about them. Because if we talk about them, we'll get fired. Or if we talk about them, we won't get hired or whatever. We'll lose all credibility in the church, in the community, in the mosque. You will lose all that credibility because people look at that the way they they look at that as and one of the things I say in the book, one of the few things I remember in my Christian upbringing is, I don't know what passage is in the Bible, but it's always stuck with me. When they talked about Jesus, they said, "What good can come from Nazareth?" You remember?
Yes, I do.
Passage,
yeah,
right.
I do.
So they said that about Jesus' environment. So
right.
You understand? So I don't know if Jesus lived in the hood or not, but when you say what good can come from Nazareth, you're indicting that whole community. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And just like Jesus' community of Nazareth was indicted, they indict the whole community of ex-offenders when they hold that person to what they did, not even considering it was 40 years ago.
Oh man. Woo. You said a mouthful there, and I'm sure you made a lot of people stand up and look at themselves. Really, literally look at themselves. And again, I want to get back to this wasted resource. That's
a good term.
Yeah, this wasted resource that we could be using to better mentor young people. Now, I remember you probably saw it years ago. They used to have the Scared Straight program. This would not be Scared Straight. This would be something similar, but not simple. that you want to do and implement. And we need to get some corporate sponsorship for that.
That's what chapter 4 in my book is about, called the self-government concept. And I even mentioned the problem with the Scared Straight thing is that, number one, I'm not in, that was like in the 70s, but kids come from certain communities. They commit a crime, get locked up. They're not going to an island that they've never been to. When they're going there, they're going to see the people that they knew and grew up with. So they're going to be protected. It ain't like, you just throw them. So my point is, you have to address their mental issues. You have to address the information that they have been fed to make them think that choosing crime is a good choice. What makes you think that's a good choice? With the ramifications that could happen. I can't scare you into that. Like, for instance, when I talk about, I know you read it in both my books, I talk about when the first day I went to Greatest for it, I heard this big boom, sounded like a bomb, and it was those steel gates shutting, right? And I say, it wasn't fear. Fear did not come over me. What came over me was reality. Oh, this going to prison? That's not a concept anymore. It really just happened. You understand what I'm saying? So, you can't, guys, where's all the prisoners from? They're from the same communities that the new crop is come from. So they're not gonna have all that crazy problems where people are bullying them and all that, because they know somebody. They probably got cousins and big brothers and all that stuff. So you can't scare nobody into that. What you have to do is you have to go dig into that subconscious and pull that crap out of them that they've been being fed.
And who can do it better than someone who's walked that walk?
And that's the point of the eruption of possible, is the fact that there's a process you go through. And one of the things I want to do, I want to start a national organization called COFI, a coalition of former inmates. And the reason why I want to do it is everybody that has taken the path and have resurrected their lives and rediscovered their humanity, there was a defining moment. For me, it was the slamming of those gates. Believe it or not, I wasn't rehabilitated the first day, but the first day was the beginning of my rehabilitation. When I heard those gates slam, I'm telling you, there was no fear in me. I was in the Nation of Islam. Nation of Islam ran the jails. So I wasn't afraid of what was happening to me behind bars. But when that thing slammed, it didn't just slam and make a noise, it slammed and the vibration was 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. You're gonna be here for 10 years. 10 years. So that process started happening in my mind, you know what I mean? But you mentioned earlier the resource. Why wouldn't I be a resource? And then you take me and multiply me hundreds and thousands of times. Why wouldn't we be resources? We're the ones who suffered the disease. We're the ones who had to find a cure for the disease of criminal thinking. And I don't care whether it's religion, whether it's education, whatever process took place. Some people change because they're just tired of going to jail. You know what I mean? But whatever that defining moment is, we need to talk about that. We need people to come out and talk about that to young people. That one day you wake up and you were the youngest, like for me. Every group I hung with growing up, I was always the youngest by 4 to 5 years at least. Then one day I woke up and I was the old man. You understand? I mean, it happens just that quick. Oh, I mean, it happens. It's not overnight, but it feels like overnight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've been through it, lived through it. No way that you can come out of North Philly and not know about it. Right. There's no way that you can't come out of Pulaski Town and the Brickyard and not know about it. And as you said, the best people who are able to save people are those who had been through that and taken, as you said, gone left, but now have come back and want to say, I want to dedicate my life to keeping you from making that same mistake. How much better would our society be if we got that smart?
That's true.
We got that smart.
And one thing I mentioned in the book is that young people have to understand, because I mean, it's true. I'm not saying it's not true, but it's very easy to throw poverty out there and as a causal factor of crime, because it is. People are poor, people want money, whatever. But the bottom line is that successful people, if you examine successful people, I don't know the data, the stats, I'm willing to bet 80 to 90%, if not more, successful people succeeded in spite of their circumstances, not because of their circumstances. And then on the other side, people who fail, they fail because they let their circumstances be a factor in their failure. So one of the things we have to understand is I don't care if you go from the richest person in the world or whatever on down, most people succeed in spite of their circumstances, not because of the circumstances. Everybody's not born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Out of all the successful people we have in this world. Young people need to understand that. So they don't have to, we don't have to blame I'm poor or poverty or I live in the hood, or I do this, I do that. Well, the people I'm talking about in my book, they were poor, they live in the hood, they did billions of years in prison, yet they still came home or whatever and decided at some point there was a defining moment where they decided that there is a better way to do things. There's a better way to live my life. Young people don't hear that every day. They don't hear that.
Yeah. And
you think, let me ask you a question. You think an up and coming young teenage golfer wouldn't sit and listen to Tiger Woods for hours talking about golf?
Correct. Good analogy.
You understand what I'm saying?
Good analogy.
Hey, a friend of mine wanna give you some tips on your game. He likes your game. Who is he? His name is Tiger Woods. What you think that person gonna do? He gonna run over there.
Gotta pay attention. Yes,
yeah,
indeed.
You know what I mean? So we're the Tiger Woods of that. We know how to get out of that situation. Unfortunately, it took a lot of time, a lot of wear and tear, but we figured it out. And so that's the whole concept of solving the riddle. You need us to help these young people solve the riddle.
Well, what will it take for you to get your dream like off the drawing board for Kofi?
To be honest with you, I need statisticians. I need people who can develop data. You know, like the data I cited, some of the data in my book.
Mm-hmm.
I need to learn. I'm not technically savvy. I need to know how to do a podcast, and I need and the reason why we want to get the statisticians in, because we want to know how many of these ex-offenders, where are they, whatever. Now the difficult part is a lot of successful ex-offenders ain't gonna want to fess up that they were ex-offenders, but they are some. You follow what I'm saying? Because of the stigma that goes with being an ex-offender. But something like this, we need to sit down and we need to talk about. We need to have a symposium. You understand what I'm saying? Of former felons, and not just former felons, but people who actually. And I don't mean bring people out there like a segment of Lifetime of the Rich and Famous, not just ex-felons who somehow got a break and became millionaires. I'm talking about, and there's an example I could use in my book. I'm sorry I don't know the guy's name, but it was a young gentleman that when he was in prison, he was in this dog training program, right? When he got out of prison, he is in South Philadelphia right now. He has a very successful dog grooming business. You understand what I'm saying? I'm people like that, people who are the fiber of our communities. You know, not the outliers, not the person who became a millionaire because he had some kind of tech savvy or whatever, although that's still an example. But I'm saying, you know, we need to know that there are a lot of people in society who have made mistakes. You know what I mean? Maybe one of your teachers in school that you like so much. The reason you like them so much because they took a special interest in you because they walk down the same path you're getting ready to walk down. They can't do that. So
well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things you talk about, just to emphasize your point, is that you observed at Graterford, I'm pretty sure, that there were people engaged in occupations within that prison and almost every strata doing darn near everything. And that was an eye-opening.
Not in almost every strata. Institutions cannot run without inmate labor. And I don't mean just washing the clothes and making the boots. I'm talking, you know, you got roofers, you know what I mean? Inmates do roofing, architectural projects. You understand? In fact, I used to be a clerk in what they call the day captain's office. The day captain's office was the hub of controlling of all the activity in the entire institution. I worked in there as a clerk. I understand that part of it just by being one of the examples I talk about in the book is that if an inmate wanted to transfer from one block to another block, He never even had to go to the sergeant or one of the guards on the block. He would go to the inmate that ran the major's office and tell the inmate, man, if the spot opened up on B block, I want to move there. All right.
Right.
The inmate that ran the major's office would do all the paperwork, get the major to sign it. The transfer will be made, and not one guard or one sergeant had anything to do with it. So yes, inmates do everything. And one of the things you don't know about prison, but if an inmate has a certain expertise, the prison is going to exploit that. He's going to get a job in the area of his expertise. Believe it or not, he's going to get and I don't know what it is now. We did all that for 32 cents an hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's probably not much more, because they talk about that being, I know here in Georgia, that's the new slave labor. But
it's always been. It's always been.
Yeah.
We milked the cows, we ran the farms. I mean, there's not one part of prison life. We made the clothes. You know what I mean? In fact, I used to work in the weave shop where we did all the linen, the towels and the washcloths and all that. I used to run one of them big weave machines. You know what I mean? So yeah, you have, that's the other thing, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I talk about that in the book also. It's so much talent behind bars. Now, I'm willing to bet it's even more talent now, because when I was in prison, technology wasn't that advanced. You know how many probably computer geeks are sitting behind bars now, and not because they did a cyber crime, because they probably were selling drugs out there in the street or whatever. But I'm just saying, these kids that this crop now, they grew up in the world of technology.
Right, starting with Nintendo when they were.
If you buy a phone right now and can't figure your phone out, all you do is take it to a 15-year-old to ask them, show me how to do this. Well, some of those 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, they're still sitting in prison. Some of them got 5 life sentences. Because you know what they did? They didn't put revolvers in their hands, they put assault rifles in their hands. You found what I'm saying? I saw a segment on the news. Guy was in North Philly, hanging out the sunroof of a car with an assault rifle, and they were riding around shooting. You know what I mean? Indiscriminately. So I'm just saying that, we have these issues, but we also have a community that we can't rely on to address them, because you're forcing them to hide. I had to hide for 23 years. And I was lucky, because when I got hired in 1993 in academia, they didn't ask you for an application. They took your resume. If you got an interview, you got an interview. And then if you got the job, you had to authenticate your degree. So you would have to have the school that you graduated from authenticate your diploma. But now they got since post 9/11, everybody has to answer that question. And I even think it's fair. I filled out a couple of applications that I got through on, because the question was, in the last 5 years, have you been convicted of a felony? Right? And I said no, and I wasn't lying. I even think that's fair. I'm not saying, erase it. You understand what I'm saying? But I'm saying, hey, if a guy honestly answers the question and tells you he's been convicted of a crime, but not within the last 5 years, ain't he worth taking a chance on? He ain't, he could have been committing crimes and not getting caught. I understand that. But more than likely, that's only a small percentage. Most people who will say, yes, I haven't committed a crime in 5 years, literally haven't committed a crime in 5 years.
Well, here's part of the hypocrisy, because we constantly say someone who served time in prison, they have paid their debt to society.
Yeah.
But in actuality, they make that a life sentence.
Right.
And that's totally unfair. And I want to add one thing, because I don't want our viewers to get and listeners to get an idea that you're talking pie in the sky, because actually in your book, you say that everybody's not going to be saved.
Oh no.
Some
No,
souls
this
are
guy,
just lost.
there's some guys I left in prison
Yeah.
that I hope they never get
Yeah.
out.
Right.
I spent 10 years with them. So no, but the vast
Right.
majority, you know, and a lot of guys who probably will never be able to function in society, been going to prison so long that they become institutionalized. You understand what I'm
Right.
saying? So, but no, I'm not talking pie in the sky. I'm just saying that, man. I'm not even asking you to open up the doors to the jails. I'm telling you, we already out here.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? I'm saying it's not like we saying free the prisoners. You know what I mean? Man, everybody got to do their time. Understand it. Some people were incarcerated unfairly. That's an issue that should be addressed, but that's not the issue I'm discussing. I'm saying you like you said, you give me 10 years, but you really gave me a life bit because
Right.
I went 40 something years crime free, and then you still forced me out of my job. And again, I'm not bitter because I loved the day I walked into Campus City College. I loved it, and I still love it. You understand what I'm saying? I'm just saying the society is programmed that way. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like a pack of wolves who see a dead sheep. They just jumped on. They saw the fact that I had been locked up, and they just jumped on that. They never even called me in to say, "Listen, what's going on here? What's happening with this?" You know what I mean? And you see it in the appendix of my book, and I actually printed it in my first book. I have a letter from my sentencing judge.
Yes.
That detailed the nature of my crime, which I'm not trying to say it was light. It wasn't.
Right.
We did some.
Read the book.
We did some pretty bad things, right?
Right.
But even my participation, he talked about the limited part I played, and they still never even discussed it with me. It was just the fact that we got you were locked up. you convicted of a felony. Not even when did this happen? I wasn't even asked that question. When did this happen?
That's 2 lifetimes ago.
So again, I hope that people don't interpret that I'm bitter, because I'm not. My life is good. I'm just saying that how many more are like that? Now, you talk about my programs, and you talk about, there's hundreds of kids who I know where they were headed, and I stopped them from going that way. So, and this is not an ego trip. So me personally, I might have saved your mom, somebody else's mom from getting a pocketbook snatched. I might have saved somebody's sister, brother, or somebody's child from becoming a drug addict or going to the penitentiary themselves. So if I could do all that by myself, how much more could an army of us do? I'm an army of one, but how much if we had a real army? But again, you can't. It's hard to do that because people do not want to be outed. You follow what I'm saying? So we got to find that small percentage of guys who it doesn't matter to. You know what I mean?
This is not the first program that I've delved into this subject. I just wanted to let you know. And I want to put you in touch with a Reverend A. Darrell Fisher.
Okay.
He is from Philly. I think he still lives in Mount Airy. He has been involved nationwide, and even I think he's done some work down in Panama on counseling people who are in prison,
right,
and getting them out and getting them to be fruitful in society.
Right.
And I think that, and maybe you guys, maybe this will be somebody else who can point you to additional resources,
right,
for Kofi, because I'd like to see Kofi become a national program, as you would.
Yes.
And what I would also like to do is to get you back here on Issues and Answers in about 6 months or so, and see how much progress we made, and if there's been no progress, and why isn't there progress?
Right.
Because I think that this is a topic that needs to be talked about over and over again until we as a society get a collective change of mind in the way we look at people who have, and we're going to start using that term, divorce themselves from criminality.
Right.
We're about ready to close here in a few minutes. Do you have some parting words that you would like to direct to our youth and to our society, Dr. Rahman?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank your network for having me. I think we had a really good talk, and maybe they can contact you. They can get the book, but they also can contact you for my information if they want to link up with me to work on some of the things we talked about. I would suggest that I don't want to, spend time giving out my email and all that, but you have that information.
Right.
They contact you. You can forward that to me. But I think one of the things that I closed my book out. The last thing I wrote in my book, I'm gonna read it to the readers. It says, sometimes life gives you more thorns than roses, but make no mistake, one doesn't come without the other. So we have to understand, and you look at a rose bush, there's more thorns on a rose bush than it is roses. You know what I mean? So our society is gonna be laden with thorns. But we have to accept that's our environment and grow roses out of that environment.
Heavy duty. Dr. Rahman, once again, I just want to thank you for joining us. Folks, this has been years in the making. I wanted to do it. And then when the second book came out, I knew I had to do it. I had to do it. So glad that we've had you here on WCEG. You have opened up some minds and some trains of thought, and I really appreciate your being here. So thank you.
I appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Let's stay in touch here.
We absolutely shall. Absolutely. Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been a great and interesting program. It's the beginning of a great new season here on WCEG. Right now, this is a sobering time in America as we are remembering 23 years ago what we referred to as 9/11, and when this country was under attack by people who just wanted to change the way that we live. And I think we ought to do a little bit, all of us should do some reflection on that day, how we felt that day, how we felt during that time, because as I mentioned on my Facebook page, that when 9/11 happened, we were all together. We were all together. And so in that train of thought, our next program, which will be coming up on September 25th, I will be featuring a Gold Star family who lost their son over in the Middle East. And they have a tremendous project dedicated to Gold Star families. So we'd like for you to tune into us again on Issues and Answers on September 25th of this year. That's 2 Mondays from now. And I would like to thank all of you for being loyal listeners to WCEG, and reminding everyone that this program will be archived on YouTube and available on even Roku and other streaming devices. All you have to do is check out WCEG Talk Radio. So today I thank you, keep safe, stay blessed, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks here on Issues and Answers with Norman A. Carter Jr.